information they get, because there are quakes that are this quake didn't happen, and they erase it off of the history. Quakes in Nevada, quakes in New Mexico, quakes in Nebraska, and they delete these quakes off the history. So there's something going on, and there's something happening underneath this planet that they're not quite ready to share with us. And I'd really like to know what that is. Not so I can be in fear, but just so I can see the full context of what's happening.
Why would they delete those off? What is the purpose of that?
The ones that I've seen deleted most often, or get commented on because they show up, they're kind of automated. These quakes show up on the web. You just search USGS and find quakes. And if you're constantly refreshing, then you'll see the red boxes show up, and particularly in Nevada. What I think is happening is they're in the process of building their underground bases. They're expanding them, whether they use nuclear explosions, conventional explosions, but it's enough to, cave in a half a cubic mile, or a quarter cubic mile, or a tenth of a cubic mile, and then they're expanding. There's one outside of Cheyenne, I think it was about a year and a half ago. It was a 4-point something. Shh, it didn't happen. Why does it matter? But something happened. Something happened. So there's some suppression of what's going on with quakes. So this technology, as we saw early on with Tesla saying, we can make quakes. We can make quakes. And if you're using scalar energy, there's a couple of ways to do it. You deposit heat onto one side of the fault. Heat, the vapor expands, and you end up with an explosion, and part of the fault line shifts. And so it's a very thermodynamic way of creating an explosion in the fault. The other, more exotic way is to create a gravity well around one side of the fault as well. And you literally remove the gravity from one side of the fault line. And so that it kind of gets collapsed, and where there is normal space-time versus a distorted space-time, you see the fault move in, and then has to come back out when the normal space-time is returned. So you literally get a pulse of space-time, and then you get a disruption. When you end up with that space-time disruption, you tend to kill life. And National Geographic was doing some scuba diving in May 2005, where that Indonesian quake happened. And they found nearly a square mile where there wasn't anything alive on the ocean floor. Dead. No sea urchins, no dead. It was one of these quantum potential weapons that triggered that. Interesting, because 3 weeks after that happened, we end up with a nuclear sub limping back to base, USS San Francisco, with its front end blown off. They said it ran aground. Maybe, maybe not.
On that note, a while ago, and it was really upsetting to read, they announced that they were going to be carrying through with these tests off of the West Coast. The plan was to kill millions and millions and millions of
Dolphins.
just sea life in general with these weapons tests. And there was protest, of course, that goes nowhere.
Yeah.
And then they said they were carrying through it, and then I never heard anything about it. So, does that sound familiar to you?
Yeah, California Skywatch. I don't remember her name. I can see her face.
Yeah.
But the gal that runs California Skywatch has really been up on naval weapons testing and that
She was
kind of.
probably the one that really made that public.
Yeah, I can see her. Kind of a short, grayish, smaller face lady. She's sweet. But anyway, California Skywatch, and she keeps track of those kinds of tests and their impact on the ocean. Her research has been coming at chemtrail phenomena from its effects on the planet. Because her background was in the USDA, any better than here, and as they saw widespread forest disease, they couldn't find a cause. They needed a causation for just these forest die-offs, these large tracts of California forest. They couldn't find pollution that they were finding in the water samples, because upstream in these 9 separate water districts that she was responsible for collecting data for, there were these spikes in aluminum, spikes in titanium, spikes in this, and not little spikes, but things that were 9, 12, 20, 40 times the limits. The frustration has been getting the EPA to respond out and sample and then, report back, this is what we found. Are you kidding me? That would blow the cover. That would mean we have a problem. So they only do what by law they have to do. And that keeps them from having to look at these pollutants that are showing up simultaneously at these high levels in separate water systems in northern California. So it's kind of frustrating if you're wanting to get to the bottom of this. And I don't know that we ever will. I think the only thing that will bring these programs down is the collapse of the dollar. When the economy finally grinds to a halt, when we finally have to rely on food, and if we're lucky enough, gold and silver and those kind of reserve things, and these military industrial complex companies don't take digidollars for payment, I think that's the only thing that will stop it. So maybe Obama's urge to spend is to bankrupt the Fed to finally bring these things to an end. Because the Fed, as we all know, is separate from the U.S. government and the Treasury. So if we can bankrupt the Fed and leave those banking families with all of this debt, then the U.S. Treasury can start fresh, independent. So we'll see. But, what else are you going to do? All right, let's hit back this because we've got about 30 frames left, and then we'll hit some questions. This particular trail, notice that we've got a track. Remember we talked about the trails out there and influencing channels of atmosphere. So we see this particular channel, you can see at least 2 wavelengths running through there. We've got those 2 wavelengths. So we've got 2 point sources resonating in the air and pushing this channel of air through. This particular flight, we've got a chemtrail here. See how at its brightest, this hump is fluorescent. It goes underneath this channel on the other side of it, and how it's not fluorescent, it's essentially disappeared. So this is one of, and in my opinion, the primary function for the trails is simply to align these channels and these movements of air through desired locations in the sky. So if you can channel a portion of the jet stream, and this is just one example of hundreds or thousands that we'll see in the course of the day. This is, again, what I like to call a persistent or a marking trail. You'll see the other small ones, the pinks and the blue and the white ones, that'll disappear. They're still chemtrails, they're just a different chemistry. But then this whole deck of clouds began to form to the north of it. So they're just laid it out, and then the weather changes on one side. And it may be that in another 10 minutes that we see this part of the cloud growing on the back side of it. But nevertheless, this marked the extent of the development of this part of the storm. Another Idaho shot trail, boom. Something happened right here. This whole segment of the atmosphere is being spread this direction, and it's not on this side. So we're running these wires through the sky to measure how parts of the atmosphere, literally, and I like to use the term digitized. It's been sliced and diced. And we run these wires, these lines, through the different digits, the different segments of the sky to see how they're all behaving.
You mean like a grid system?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, it's tic-tac-toe in the sky. We've never seen that pattern happen. Not even once. Yeah. But there's definitely a break. And so they, from satellite